Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. My name's Clayson West, local college student and fact-checking extraordinaire. It's no secret that the internet is full of misinformation. Whether it be misleading titles, to taking things out of context, or anything in between, there's a lot of deception out there. Fake news especially has become an increasingly prevalent problem over the last few years. And among these fake news and misinformative websites are a plethora of extremist and heavily politically skewed groups that present themselves as true and factual news, when that simply is not the case. Today we'll be taking a closer look at one of these websites in particular, Natural News. I've picked apart this website and some of its work using the following strategies as outlined by digital literacy expert Mike Caulfield in both his YouTube videos and online book, and I'll be presenting my findings to you in this video. So let's get started. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this website pulled up. Whoa, now hold your horses there, partner, because this is where lateral searching comes in. We're not going any further just yet. We might skim some of these titles, but we aren't going any deeper into the website itself. Instead, we're going to hop off into a new tab real quick and find the Wikipedia page for this website. Now, Wikipedia has gotten some flack in the past, but as Mike Caulfield outlines in one of his videos, it's an excellent starting point if you just want to get a general overview of what you're dealing with. And as we can see here, Natural News is, quote, an anti-vaccination, conspiracy theory, and fake news website known for promoting pseudoscience and far-right extremism. Yikes! That is not looking good so far. But let's back up this information with another source. For example, the media bias chart. This chart ranks the reliability and political skew of a multitude of media sources. And, as we can see, Natural News ranks as one of the most conservative and least reliable websites, which backs up what we found on Wikipedia. Right away, we can also determine this website's audience, which is a very important factor to consider when we do our analysis. As we can infer from the two sources that we just looked at, this website's audience is likely people who are far right-leaning in terms of political opinion, or at least people who have conservative views on certain topics. So, right off the bat, we know we should be a little skeptical of any information we find on this website. Keeping that in mind, let's go a little deeper into the website itself and pick apart some of its content. The first article I chose to research is titled, "No Surprise! WHO Kowtows to Communist China Announces the Virus Didn't Come from the Wuhan Lab," written by Lance D. Johnson. This article talks about how the World Health Organization denounced the theory that the COVID-19 virus originated as a potential bioweapon from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The article claims that the WHO is wrong in doing so, and is too afraid to stand up to the Chinese party, and are taking part in a cover-up. They also praise former President Trump for reducing funding towards WHO, and criticize two WHO members that either opposed Trump or the idea that the COVID-19 virus came from a lab. Let's turn to some outside sources to fact-check this article. And I'll give credit where credit is due, they do get some information correct. The key word there being some. The day before this article was published, the World Health Organization did announce that the COVID-19 virus was not man-made, and that the most likely origin was transmission via animal. In addition, the quotes that Natural News features, as you can see, are all generally correct. The problem here lies in how they present all of this information. They do so with a clear bias. It's in their phrasing, in their description of the events, and, most importantly, in their selective presentation of the facts. For example, they cite that Dr. Li Mingyan, a Chinese virologist, confirmed that the COVID-19 virus was made in a lab at the behest of the Chinese government. What Natural News neglects to mention, however, is that although this citation is correct, it's not necessarily true. What I mean by that is that although Dr. Yan did say this, she probably isn't the most reliable source. I won't go too deep into it, but this article on Snopes.com does an excellent job at deconstructing both Dr. Yan's history of questionability and the flaws in her argument. What it essentially boils down to is that the evidence Dr. Yan provides comes from a report that was not peer-reviewed, nor was it acutely and professionally assessed. But if that's not enough for you, we can take a purely scientific look at things.
There is no scientific proof that the COVID-19 virus was altered or engineered artificially. This article, which was written by Dr. Polly Hayes, talks about how if there were any kind of past man-made alterations to the virus's genetic code, there would be clear indications in the form of a genetic signature, and that no such evidence exists.
No surprise, this article is bogus. The second article I decided to cover is titled, "This is What the Left Has Become, Targeting R-Word Children for Transgender Indoctrination," written by Ethan Huff.
This article claims that LGBTQ people are pedophiles that are targeting and taking advantage of children with Down syndrome and autism. There's honestly not much else to summarize here. This entire article is essentially one long rant bashing on the LGBTQ community.
Where do I even start with this? Okay, let's start with the whole pedophile thing. You may have noticed that throughout this article, the author exclusively refers to the LGBTQ community as the LGBTQP community. That P, as the author has made excruciatingly apparent, stands for pedophile, and is not an actual part of the LGBTQ acronym. Pedophiles never have been and never will be condoned in the LGBTQ community. And the claim that LGBTQ people are pedophiles that are targeting vulnerable children is verifiably false. And look, I'm no professional, but Professor Gregory Herek, a renowned psychologist from the University of California, Davis, is a professional. So let's hear what he has to say about this, shall we?
In a report done by Professor Herek, a massive amount of evidence is compiled that disproves the idea of LGBTQ people being inherently pedophilic or more likely to sexually abuse children. The fact of the matter is that pedophilia and child molestation are not a matter of gender preference. It's that these people are fixated on children themselves, not their gender. Herek provides an overwhelming amount of data and documentation from multiple sources to support this conclusion, and is very comprehensive and objective in his analysis.
The same, however, cannot be said for the author of this Natural News article. This article is written not just with a blatant bias, but with outright hate speech. They call members of the LGBTQ community, particularly trans people, perverts, demonic, members of a sex cult, filth, and a myriad of other distasteful things.
And if that weren't enough, their sources are also completely inadequate. One of their listed citations is InfoWars, which is notorious for being just as biased as Natural News, and the link to it doesn't even work because the video was taken down. Their only other two working sources are not only from Natural News themselves, but from the very same author of this article. Now, I don't know about you all, but that doesn't seem very trustworthy to me.
Not only that, but quite frankly, they're just using Down syndrome and autistic individuals as an excuse to perpetuate this hateful ideology. I mean, just take a look at the title. They outright use the R word in the title of the article. If they truly had the best interests of these people at heart, they would know that the R word is an archaic term that is now exclusively used as a slur. It's not a medical term anymore. It is only meant to be hurtful. So much so that I'm not even using it in the form of a direct quote. Oh, but that's not all, folks, because we haven't even addressed this image yet. I used reverse Google image searching to find out some more information about this photo. From what I could find, its original usage was in an article on LGBTQNation.com, and is credited to the author of the article, Daniel Villarreal.
Now, it's worth noting that the image on Natural News and the image on LGBTQ Nation are slightly different. Unfortunately, I couldn't find out why that is, but regardless, that's not what's important about this image. So what is?
Well, the answer lies in another concern that the Natural News article brings up. This concern is, of course, that these people are being manipulated or forced in some way into, well, in this case, doing drag. But here's the thing. Unlike what the article seems to imply, the people in this picture aren't children. From what I could find after cross-referencing with multiple sources, these are all adults who are perfectly capable of making their own decisions. Natural News is completely misrepresenting the truth of this photo.
This is a group of drag performers with Down syndrome, all of which are very outspoken about how drag is something they enjoy doing as a form of self-expression. In addition, all of them are, again, performers, and generally have some form of prior professional experience in the arts. No one here is being exploited or taken advantage of. That much is clear.
I mean, there is so much wrong with this article that if I were to try to go through all of it, this video would be 2 hours long. So instead, I'll just summarize. Yet another article proves to be total bogus. All in all, I think we've definitely proved this website to be a whole bunch of bullshit. Nonsense. A whole bunch of nonsense. Now more than ever, it's extremely important to be aware of what we're consuming on the internet. Misinformation is everywhere, and sometimes it might not be as glaringly obvious as with natural news. It's easy to spread lies online, but it's also easy to prove these lies wrong if you have the right tools. You don't have to do a whole expose like this every time you go on the internet, but just keep in mind some of these basic media literacy skills. It'll go a long way in preventing the spread of misinformation.